Back on episode 122, we visited with California dairyman Steve Shehadey as he shared the innovations in renewable energy and sustainability that have earned Bar 20 Dairy in the San Joaquin Valley the 2023 Innovative Dairy Farmer of the Year Award and positioned his family business for the future. Well, today we are going to meet the future of Bar 20, Steve's daughter, Bonney, who represents the fourth generation of this family business and who plans to make her own mark in the dairy sustainability arena. How did this young leader, who actually did not grow up right on the dairy, take it upon herself to learn the ground level work, from milking to backing up a mixer wagon? And how does this fresh Cal Poly graduate view the dairy industry and her own future? Find out right here on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast Young Leaders Series. This is for producers and professionals in the first 5 years of their dairy careers. I'm Peggy Coffeen, and it's my mission to connect you with others who are like you, driven to make a difference and determined to do it in the dairy industry. Let's hear from Bonney Shehadey. So you got to grow up in kind of this unique time in the dairy business and within your family business, because Bar 20 has really been an early innovator in this space of renewable energy. And that's what we were able to hear in the conversation with your dad. And it was cool to hear it through his eyes. But what has it been like for you as a young person growing up, not just in dairy, but as a young person growing up in a community that I'm guessing your community where you went to school was probably not full of other dairy farm kids, huh?
It's been really interesting. I feel like I've gained a really cool perspective, honestly, because I've been around a lot of kids that have never been on a dairy farm. When I was in high school, very few people that I knew were involved in ag. My school did not have an FFA chapter or anything like that. I grew up playing travel softball, and that was my life. And so it's been really amazing as I've stepped into the dairy world, most specifically when I was 16, but also growing up, we'd have conversations around the dinner table about things going on at the dairy or things going on in ag. And it was not something that I would be conversing with my peers with when I was in elementary school, but it was something that, at home, I had that foundation being built. And I also just think it's been really interesting because I have seen such an incredible work ethic from my dad and from my family and from my grandpa. And I think that's something that's really unique to the dairy industry. And it's something that really stood out. I think it's something that's very common in the dairy industry. And it's something that really stood out and inspired me, especially with all the effort towards dairy sustainability and creating that renewable energy. When I'm hearing so much about, it's important to reduce fossil fuel usage and we need to be paying attention to our emissions. And I grew up in the Central Valley of California, which has really bad air quality. Most of my friends had asthma. I grew up with asthma. There's bad air days where we would be in sports we couldn't practice because the air quality was too bad and it was unhealthy. And that's a lot of other factors. It's not just dairy. There's car pollution and smoke from the fires. But it's something that I want to do what I can to improve that air quality. And I'm really proud of my family for taking action and doing what we can to improve our air quality, but also generate clean power.
That is such an incredible perspective that you just shared, because it's almost like you have lived two lives. You have lived the life of what I would compare to kind of like the average consumer that we talk about in the dairy industry. And that's you're living in the Central Valley and you're doing that as a student, but then you also have this dairy farm experience. But what's really interesting is when you tie together how all of this became something that mattered to you because of, like you said, the air quality and how that affected you as a student athlete and your friends. And being able to just really tie together both of these experiences in your life at a young age. So did that drive any sort of additional passion for you to be excited about what your family's business could do?
Yeah, it definitely did. I love to be outside. I know a lot of people love to be outside. A lot of people in ag love to be outside. And I love being in nature, it's very much a passion of mine. And so taking care of that environment and being a steward of the land, protecting it for generations to come. I'm fourth generation of my family, and I'm so grateful to my family that I've had this opportunity to continue that, because it's something I love and I think is super interesting and a really great career choice. I hope that my future generations may have that opportunity, and I think that it's important for us to be like stewards of the land in that sense, whether it be air quality, whether it be water, whether it be soil health, um, taking care of the animals and animal welfare. I think that that's really important to continue that, because a lot of farmers want their families to be able to have this legacy to continue if they choose. And so I think that's added to the passion, because I love to be outside and I don't like to be coughing or having asthma issues when I'm outside hiking or even just walking around with the cows, whatever it is. So I think it's important to do the best that we can to protect our environment, but just for practical use, but also for future generations.
This is a really unique and different perspective on how you look at the work that your family is doing in the dairy business, right? A lot of times we take our pride in feeding the world, right? Or providing the product of that's a nutrition product. But your lens through which your personal experience helps you see the impact of Bar 20 is just this higher level of sustainability and also a very personal one. And that's really cool. That's why I enjoy these conversations with just being able to see the world through your eyes, Bonney. So you mentioned that you went to work at the dairy when you were 16. What were your first jobs like when you pulled in at the dairy at 16 years old?
When I first started, I was doing basically whatever they needed help with. I would drive the little water truck and feed the calves their water. I would help with calf feedings. I built some calf hutches, because about the time I was starting, we were transitioning from a different kind of hutch and into the plastic calf hutches. I helped put those together and lay those out. I would help with vet checks, doing the RFID scanning. I had some really great mentors on our family farm who are amazing herd managers and taught me so much of what I know today. I got to experience some ultrasounding stuff. I got to sit in on nutrition meetings, learn about the farming side of things a little bit. It was really amazing hands-on experience, and some of it was like a little bit of grunt work, but it's good to do it all. And then even after my time at my family dairy, I started working on the Cal Poly dairy farm, and I was a milker for half of my freshman year and then almost my whole sophomore year. And then I was a feeder, and I would drive the equipment and drop loads, mix feed. So I got a really good, well-rounded experience with all of that. And then after I was milking and I was feeding, then I became the business assistant at the Cal Poly Dairy. And so I got to learn a little bit more about the business side of things and being organized with paperwork and making sure things are up to date with inventory and all that.
Oh, wow. So you had some pretty incredible experiences, and I give you so much credit for just diving in with both feet and all hands to do everything from putting together calf hutches to eventually doing the job of milking and feeding. And those are just such core and fundamental skills in dairy that just you having done it yourself, like, how did that impact the way that you looked at the team at Bar 20 that makes it all happen?
Yeah, it was honestly, all of it's been such a valuable experience. Every job that I've worked, I feel like I've been able to learn something from, and it has given me so much respect for all of the workers in ag. Everybody does a job, and that job is important no matter how, if you feel it might be small, that it's not. You can't function a dairy without milking cows. You can't function a dairy without having it clean. All these things that some people might look down on, I think that they're so respectable and so important. They take their hard work, and it is really, really important. Having grown up outside of the dairy and not doing those things from a young age, coming in when I was a little older and starting those, it really, really gave me so much more respect, because I always knew it was hard work, but it's something that you can't really know how hard work it is until you experience it, and people can explain it to you. You can watch people do it, but it's something that really, once you experience it, then you
You
have the understanding.
And you did just that. You got the experience and you did the thing. You milked the cows, you fed the cows, you did it all. And so now you are just about to embark on your official entrance into the dairy career or into the dairy industry as you graduate from Cal Poly here. So what does that look like for you? Are you heading back to Bar 20 or is your path going to take you a different direction?
So right now, I'm still in the figuring that out stage. My dad and my family have been so amazing in teaching me that learning experience is the best thing, and you should always be looking to learn and grow. I do know that long term, I want to go back to the Bar 20 dairy family farm. That is where I want to be long term. I'm keeping my eyes and ears open for some other opportunities in industry, fresh out of college, get a little bit more experience because you can never have too much experience. I'm especially interested in dairy sustainability type role. I know that it's kind of a little bit newer and on the forefront, but it's something that I'm passionate about learning more about. I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to be in the next couple months. I'm going to travel a little bit this summer, and then hopefully I'll either be working at Bar 20 or I will be somewhere else. I'm not sure where yet, but no matter what, I'm excited to go to Bar 20 whenever that is. If I end up somewhere else first, then I'm excited for that too. We'll see where the Lord takes me.
So you have some excitement ahead as you just forge into your own path and find your way. And you mentioned that dairy sustainability is kind of the field, I'll call it maybe the field or the specialty that you'd like to take all of your experience and your knowledge and your skill set and channel that into. And so that could take you in a lot of different directions. When you know your why, there can be a lot of different hows in the way that you serve that purpose. And so whether that how is working for another company or whether that how is taking you back to Bar 20, how would you describe your why when it comes to dairy sustainability?
That's a really good question. It's definitely something that's hard to put into words, but I'll do my best. I would say part of my why is I love dairy. I love the dairy industry, and I want to see that to be able to flourish and continue. Growing up in the state of California, that is something that is constantly, we need to adapt to sustainability in order to keep functioning in order to survive. But also, I want to preserve this industry for future generations. And I love that we produce such a nutritious and amazing product that I personally love. Love ice cream, love cheese, love milk, drink so much milk. But I think it's really important to do so in a responsible way. And I would love to help all farmers do that as best as they can. And I know that it's a big adjustment in some ways, and it can be difficult because it is a newer field, or there's so many innovations that are happening right now. Part of my why is wanting to help other people adapt those things and learn about them, because I've had so much fun learning about it and I can't wait to learn more. And I think it's really cool, especially because like a lot of my generation, a lot of the younger generation really prioritizes this in their food buying decisions. And also on social media or at school, like lots of people, when they hear I'm in dairy, they question, they say, oh, isn't that killing they'll say things that are negative about our industry. And I want to show them that that's not true. And our industry is doing a lot to keep a healthy planet and preserve the land for future generations. You know, it's multifaceted, I would say, but lots of different reasons.
Oh, well, I think you gave a beautiful explanation. And because it is multifaceted, it comes from heritage and legacy. It comes from what you've been able to witness your family do. But then we tie in that really unique experience that you have of just being in conversations with people that are outside of dairy and are either consumers or questioning consumption of product or production practices. And when you put all of those things together, it creates a super powerful why and a heck of a lot of opportunities for your how, that you'll take that and run with it, Bonney. And I'm excited to watch you just run because you have it in you, girl. So just take a moment, and you talked about some of the conversations that you would have with other students on campus. Give us in the industry that are listening that haven't lived in that setting, in that environment, or had these conversations with young people in their early 20s about food choices, about perception of dairy, whether it's from an environmental side or production side. Just go into a little more detail. Get any good stories that you could share that really stand out of conversations you've had with your own peers that came from a different life experience.
There's been so many, it's hard to pick like one conversation. I think something that is important for listeners to understand about my generation and the conversations, what I've gathered from the conversations that I've had, is people are very curious about how their food's made. They want to know. And they don't. They haven't been on a farm. They're very far removed. And it's not their fault that they're that far removed. It's just the way things are now. They want to have an open communication. They trust dairy farmers. They might come off sometimes on social media or certain things as attacking, but when you ask more questions, you kind of get down to they're just concerned about what's going into their food, what's happening with their food, how is it being produced. And a lot of the time, people are just in a setting where they know so little about where their food is that they're afraid. They don't know what's going on. And so it's hard to trust when you aren't familiar with how they are being done. And so there's just like a lot of mistrust, I think, there, just from misunderstanding or just, they're curious though. I think a lot of people want to learn and they love to hear my stories, or they love to, I love to talk to them about the cows and how we treat them and how we treat them with respect, and we love our animals, and they want to hear that, and they're happy and they're comforted by that because it's true. And they also want to know that we're taking care of our environment because that's something that's important to them.
So what you've ran into is when those conversations come up, it's not necessarily opposition to practices and to dairy, but it's more, as you said, curiosity and questions, and that an opportunity to build trust.
There might be some skepticism on some level, but it's just because that trust hasn't been established yet. And so I think as we work to build that and build that strength in that communication from farmer to consumer, that can only grow in a positive way.
And how lucky are we that we have young people like you, Bonney, that are so articulate and passionate and effective communicators when it comes to messages like these. And I can only imagine the impact you had during your time on campus and what will be ahead of you as you go full forge into the career field, wherever that direction takes you. And Bonney, one thing I always like to get some perspective on from our young leaders is to learn about what you see as challenges in the industry and when you look ahead at your career and your future. And so what has come up for you? Any challenges that have just really kind of come up in your experience thus far, whether it was working at the dairy at Bar 20 or working on campus and the roles that you worked in, or as you start to determine which direction you're going from here? What's a challenge that has really come to surface for you?
So I think something that I do love about the dairy industry, but also it's a tough one, is as dairy farmers, we're in a constant state of needing to adapt, needing to change, and things don't stay the same, which I think is a big challenge because you can't be behind. You need to be innovative. You can't be stuck in your ways too much. And so I think that is a big challenge that has taught me a lot about change and that it's okay sometimes. Growing up, I was always someone who really did not like change, but it's something that I've kind of grown to appreciate. My experience with dairy, there's so much innovation occurring and so many obstacles that are coming our ways. in terms of environmental policy, in terms of regular policy, in terms of consumer attitudes. So I think, I don't know if this answers that quite, but challenges that I've seen have come from a needing to adapt and trying to keep an open mind.
So you're kind of speaking to what you observe in the industry and some of the things that are just your normal, especially in California. And it's what's driven your family to be adaptable as a business model to be able to meet the expectations that have now become regulations that you may not agree with, may not understand, but have now become your social license to do business. And they went from social license to literal permit license, right? When it comes to air quality and water and things like that. And so that's what you see is kind of, if I'm hearing you correctly, is some of these outside pressures and the challenge of figuring out how to manage that. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Kind of the challenge is being able to adapt regardless of the obstacles that come your way, and also trying to be a couple steps ahead of that, because when you're ahead of the curve, it's a lot easier to make those changes and adapt strategically and properly for those, versus when you're kind of caught on your heels and you're like, okay, this needs to happen. If we had been planning 5 years ago for this, then it would be a lot easier. And so I think that's one of the big challenges, is just anticipating, paying attention, but also paying attention to things that are coming up in the future, not just always the here and the now, because it's really easy to get caught up in the here and the now. And sometimes the here and the now is what you need to focus on. But always kind of keeping your ear to the ground, is that the right saying? Where you're sniffing out those things that may become an issue down the line, or maybe something that you need to work on down the line. So just being aware of things going on or things that might be down the pipeline years to come.
That forward thinking is what I kind of hear through what you're saying. And so as you say that, it definitely is a reflection of what your dad shared. When we had our conversation about sustainability, your dad shared some really great little one-liner quotes from your grandfather. And it sounds like that attitude, mentality, that culture, that family values is what has also been passed down to you as that next generation. And so are there any of those lines or things that have really resonated with you that you heard dad or grandpa say through your years of growing up in the family?
There's so many. It's hard to pick one. They full of wisdom, all of them, and it served them well. And I'm so fortunate to have experienced growing up with them, instilling those values in me. And I'm just very thankful, and I feel very blessed. But I think some of the biggest ones, and I can never say it as eloquently as they do, but some of the biggest ones circle around kind of the importance of being a lifelong learner. My grandpa would always talk about take every opportunity that you can and turn it into a learning experience. And another one is, if you're not making mistakes, you're not doing anything. That's how you learn. If you're not making mistakes, then what are you doing? As people, we're prone to mistakes as long as we're trying new things. And also just having a growth mindset and turning everything into a learning opportunity, whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. How can I learn from this?
Those are some good ones. Now I'm going to ask you to put them into practice. So is there an example of an experience you have had where maybe it was something that didn't go great, but you were able to call upon those words that had been spoken into you over the years and repeatedly, that mistakes are a learning experience, right? And if you're not making mistakes, you're not doing anything, or at least you're not taking the risk that it takes to move yourself forward, right? So what's a good example? Is there a story that comes to mind of where you really had to dig deep and bring up those words that were placed in your mind and in your heart by dad and grandpa?
I think most of what comes to mind is when I was first starting out on the dairy farm and first starting out in those roles as like a milker or a feeder. Learning to drive heavy equipment was really challenging as a perfectionist and someone who likes to do things right and likes to do things right quickly. That was definitely a bit of a learning curve. I had never driven equipment, let alone backed up a tractor with a feed wagon on the back of it. I definitely had some instances where maybe I hit a pole or something and I had to be like, it's part of the learning process. And thankfully, the people that were training me at the Cal Poly Dairy were really gracious and really patient in teaching me those things. Yeah, I think that's the most like tangible comes to moment mind is the humbling experience of learning how to drive heavy equipment.
That's a great one because you know what it really demonstrates? It demonstrates the culmination of everything you just shared, those words of wisdom passed down from your family that just have really pushed you to say, okay, try new things, do different things, and it's okay to make mistakes and learn from them. Like, what did that do for you when you were able to, okay, so you hit a pole, right? Like any farm girl who has ever attempted to learn how to drive tractor and back something up has hit something. I hit plenty as a kid, never got fired. So apparently I didn't hit anything hard enough. How would you package up that experience and use it for your next steps?
I think some of the things that it taught me are, well, one, humility, because it's really humbling, but also patience and perseverance and empowerment. It definitely felt really empowering to overcome those things that before I started the job, I was definitely really intimidated by it. But I did the work and I learned, I made my mistakes, and I think it instilled another level of self-confidence in my abilities and my abilities to learn to do things and put myself out there. So that would be, I think, learning, putting myself out there, and gaining a little bit of confidence.
So, Bonney, you shared some pretty cool experiences that you've had during your college career, even before that, and excitement for what's ahead. I'm curious, though, as you think about other young people that are entering the dairy industry as producers and professionals, maybe they're just entering college, or maybe they are like you and they're just about to enter the real work world. What advice would you give to others that you wish you would have had for yourself?
Oh, that's a tough one because I feel like there's so much that I've learned from just coming to school and being on my own for the first time. And so picking like a best one is always like the tough one. I think a lot of it comes down to those same simple things that my grandpa and my dad have been telling me my whole life, which is like, they were right and I didn't want them to be right, but they were. And I think it's put yourself out there and be open to new opportunities and use those as learning experiences.
So, have you told Dad that he was right yet?
I don't want to, but, I have had to concede that he was right in those things.
Well, this leads up into the next question that I have for you. And I don't want to assume that I know your answer to this question, but I always like to also ask our young leaders, who's inspired you? I mean, you are committed to dairy as your future and whatever path you take with it. You know that that's where your heart is, and that's the field that you are going to make an impact on. And so, who's been your inspiration?
I think first and foremost, my family, my dad, my grandpa, my great grandpa, my mom has been so supportive and amazing. Just, all of my family. I'm blessed to have a wonderful big family with lots of cousins who we grew up together. And I am really inspired by them and my uncles before me and my dad, seeing them all work together in different things. And then also just growing up, seeing my dad being so dedicated and so passionate has been really inspiring. But also, honestly, a lot of my interactions with dairy farmers in general, I've gone to lots of conferences, gone to World Ag Expo, different dairy dinner things, and it's really inspiring to see all of the farmers in their different dedication and their passion for the industry and their commitment to a job that's not always rewarding. And so I think I would say first my family, but also just the industry in general. I'm really impressed by all of the interactions that I've had and the people that I've met and their dedication and passion to being a part of this industry, which I don't know if that's common in all industries, to be so supportive of each other and really work together and have a good sense of camaraderie.
You don't have to look much further than your family and the people you are already connected with right in your dairy community. There's some pretty inspiring ones out there, and it's a blessing. It's a blessing. Like, that's who we get to be connected with each other in this business. And that's why you're so passionate and so dedicated to this being. You could do so many things, Bonney. Like, you are young and you're talented and you're ambitious and you're a go-getter, and you could have taken your talent and put it anywhere, but you're choosing dairy. And this is why. It's the people.
The people are so important in everything that we do, and the people are part of my why. There we go. That's circling back to earlier.
Oh, I love it. This is so great. So as you prepare yourself over the last few years in college, and as you're getting ready to head out into the world, as you prepare yourself to really make a difference in the dairy industry through your passion and by articulating that why, what are some of the resources that you tap into to help you prepare to be your best at everything that you're doing? Books, podcasts, groups, like, where do you plug into?
I think it's important to be hearing from lots of different sources instead of just getting all of my information from one source. And so I do jump around a little bit. I love to go to conferences too. I've only been to a handful so far, but hearing all of those speakers and getting those networking experiences and just talking to people has been so incredibly valuable in my college experience and a little bit pre-college, like a dairy mixer type stuff. I went to the Dairy Sustainability Conference this spring in California Dairy Sustainability. I went to the Animal Nutrition Conference just recently. I went to World Ag Expo, got to a lot of really cool experience talking to people there. I do like listening to podcasts. I've listened to this one a couple times. I also like listening to Discover Ag. It's fun to hear about different sectors of things going on in the ag world. Through that, reading Progressive Dairyman, Hordes Dairyman, whatever I can get, I kind of like to soak it up. Also, Milk Producers Council emails, those are helpful.
So you're soaking it in all directions.
All directions, yeah.
Well, this is great. And the things that you mentioned are just helpful resources for others out there to tap into if they haven't yet. So thank you for sharing those. And Bonney, as we wrap up our conversation today, I see your passion, I see your skills, and that's where I see you. So, oh, well, this is super fun. Okay, Bonney, this has been such a great chat with you to hear kind of this next gen perspective for Bar 20, but really for you, and just understanding how your background, which came from a couple different aspects, has molded you and prepared you to take the next step in whatever direction that might be. But you're taking with you such a cool skill set and a cool mindset, which is what we talk a lot about with Uplevel Dairy. Is it's not just the skill set, it's the mindset. And you have that. And I'm just excited to see for you, Bonney, where that takes you. And so as we wrap up here, is there anything else you'd like to share?
I think that we've covered a lot. I think it's been really good. It's been a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for jumping on with me on our Uplevel Dairy Young Leader series. You just heard from Bonney Shehadey, the next generation to come into Bar 20 Dairy, and a new generation of young leaders who are positioned to lead the dairy sustainability space. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you take a moment to leave a rating or review on your favorite listening platform. Those 5-star ratings go a long way in helping us continue to serve the dairy industry through the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. You can also make sure you get new episodes every time right in your inbox by heading over to upleveldairy.com and subscribing to join the Uplevel Dairy community. I'm Peggy Coffeen, and thank you for listening to this Uplevel Dairy Podcast.